Okay, let's call the meeting to order, please. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, action item number 1. Chad.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Chad Satola, Director of Solid Waste. We're returning after a work session, public hearing and deliberations on changes to the rates and services that Cascade Disposal provides in their unincorporated franchise area. Last week, we reviewed a proposal for universal service for Sunriver that would include a side yard commingle and glass collection at a rate of $14 per month. And the board agreed that we would proceed with that and to return to the board with options for the rural and distant rural area. So today I have two different versions of the order for you. One incorporates just the changes that we looked at last week for Sunriver, and the second version of the order includes changes to the rural and distant rural service area for Cascade Disposal. And what Cascade came up with was going with subscription service for yard debris at $7 per month addition, and adding glass and commingle collection in the distant rural area and glass collection in the rural area for a total of $4.25 a month. What they did to kind of normalize the service areas, they expanded the rural area to include all the distant rural service area except for Sunriver. So Sunriver would now be considered the distant rural service area, and everything else would be the rural service area. So I included a map with the packet today that shows the changes in the service area. Just a little bit easier to see a picture rather than try to explain how that works. So again, they're expanding the rural service area to incorporate everything but Sunriver. And with the proposal, adding $4.25 a month to include glass and commingle in the area that's expanded into the rural service area, and then adding glass to what was the original rural service area, $4.25 a month to normalize the fees, because the distant rural service area has a little bit higher rates for standard collection of trash because of the distance that Cascade Disposal travels to there. Normalizing the rates across the board, the change in what was originally the distant service area is kind of graduated. So again, normalizing it, the rate change is a little bit different. If you happen to be in the 95-gallon side yard service, you get a cut-in rate of 65 cents a month for that. So two options for you to consider: Sunriver only, as we discussed last week, with universal side yard service. And the other option is including Sunriver, as discussed last week, with subscription yard debris service and the addition of glass and commingle in an expanded rural service area at $4.25 a month.
Well, so I'm very supportive of the Sunriver item. We talked about it. The community's talked about it. We got lots of input on that subject. So I mean, that's I'm supportive of that. It's pretty exciting. The next step, though, I mean, as an elected official, I have a hunch that there's going to be a lot of folks that haven't been informed on this. I mean, this is just kind of me thinking out loud about, I'm hesitant to proceed a little bit today because I just have a hunch that there's a bunch of people are going to be like, well, where'd this come from? I don't, it may show up in their next bill or a notification in the bill for a future, but for us to make a decision today, I kind of like a little bit more, I don't know, get the proposal out there for everybody to see, I guess, is my thought.
It does seem fair, but then when you see, Pacific Power wants to do a 12% rate hike, something along those neighborhoods, I'm like, people are just going to go, when is this going to stop? And, I thought what you came up with was fair, but I kind of agree with you. I think maybe, we go ahead with Sunriver today, and we can come back and look at this. Maybe things will settle down in in a month or two.
Pardon me, I guess, so this is, it's on paper now, because, we didn't have this far last time,
Correct,
you had
yeah,
a
when
proposal, so
We
that's,
spoke last week, we had not had a
Yep.
proposal from
Yeah.
Cascade Disposal for this.
I would say again that we are paying for this waste stream one way or another. Either we're paying in more of our landfill space being filled up with recyclable material faster, or we're paying to divert that material from the landfill. And in my opinion, the more proactive, forward-looking, responsible, fiscally responsible thing to do is to bear, assign the costs and bear the costs and make the recycling system work that much better. So I would like to proceed with both pieces, but I'm one vote, so I'm ready to proceed with whatever we can move forward now. And and make sure we do the work on the other stuff that other commissioners think is necessary if that is the way that you're going to vote.
Maybe, Chad, this information can go out with the fire-free information, as simple as possible, so that people actually read it, and they're trained that fire-free is going to be coming. And then if they, for those communities that it's applicable for, so they actually go, oh, okay, I need to.
As you were speaking, I was thinking I could certainly work with Morgan to do a press release specific to this. This time last year, there was a lot of people calling for access to yard debris collection services in response to the fire that occurred down in Deschutes River Woods. And there was a period of time where we were getting those calls on a fairly regular basis. Memory tends to be short, and we haven't heard from people since then. But maybe it's time to bring it back up to them. And with the glass and commingle collection, although we didn't have any response or comments from the distant rural service area. Our solid waste management plan, one of the goals is to expand our collection services to help get to that 45% goal that the DEQ is asking us to get to. So I think the outreach using the press release to get this information out, that maybe we'll get some response, and maybe we can revisit this again in a shorter term than after fire free. I think it's important that we try to move forward with some of these collection programs. With short memory, it'll come back to people, I'm sure.
Yeah, you're touching on something that I had that had kind of faded to the background while we were talking about glass and commingle, but there were a whole lot of people who were asking for access to yard debris collection, and as we were facing a really bad wildfire season last year, which we will have again this year. And as we were seeing people's yard debris burning efforts causing substantial wildfires in our community, so in my opinion, that just adds urgency to the need to move forward. And I would say again, I would like to move forward today. And if we're not going to move forward today, I hope that we can bring a lot of focus to this this potential change, so that we can move forward quickly.
One possible thing maybe we could consider, if it's agreeable with Cascade Disposal, since the yard debris collection is a subscription service, we're not forcing people to pay that unless they want to. Maybe we can look at returning with an order dealing directly with just the addition of the yard debris service.
Now,
and if the concern is the $4.25 additional fee across the board, I need to work with Cascade Disposal, see if that package deal can be split up the way I'm thinking here.
right. I really appreciate that additional option, and I'm sorry we didn't think about it last week or 2 weeks ago or whenever that was. But would there be support for that?
As a subscription, yes. I think that's, $7 a month?
$7 a month per.
Yeah, no, I think that sounds, they don't have to do it, they can sign up for it. And truly, the way we're looking now, that might be a really good compromise today.
And again, that's contingent on Cascade Disposal agreeing to that. This proposal came as a package offer to us, so.
If we implemented that, if we made that decision today, could this collection system be in, in operation by, the subscription yard debris collection, could that be in operation by this summer?
Cascade thinks that they can get, as proposed, the rural service that includes glass, commingle, and yard debris rolled out in the April, May timeframe. Sun River's a little further down the road. It'd be late summer for that because of ordering the trucks that they need for Sun River service.
Right.
But
right.
yeah, in theory, they could get that rolling in the springtime here.
Well, let's, I'll do the business part of this, and a little bit more conversation is what I'm thinking. So I'll move Board Order 2022-015 with support for Sun River Service Zone changes.
That would be option one on the.
Option 1, okay.
Second?
Any further discussion? Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
So then finishing up the other conversation here, as I say, the distant rural service zone, I guess I want to look at a map and understand the density out there. It may not be that big of a step. I'm just saying today, I'm hesitant to say, oh, well, let's just go do this. Just looking at a map and understanding the number of services out there, kind of the pattern as a franchise operator, what does it really look like? As I say, I'm looking at the blocks here, but I mean,
Sure.
getting down to the street level, see just some of the density, just for my own benefit, because I'd hate to do this and have, some number of people are like, well, where did this come from? And maybe it's been notified. I just don't have a feel for it.
Well, the only notification that went out was through this effort here with the public hearing and the press contacts that came out of that hearing. Again, we didn't hear from anyone in the distant rural service zone
Yep,
during that
so-
period.
As I say, it may not, because I've talked to some people and they're like, yes, I'd love that service. Not in this zone specifically, but a few people this weekend I was asking, and I got some thumbs up on it in, southern Deschutes County. I'm not proposing that today, but I'm just saying, I'd just like to know just a few connections.
So Chad, just to repeat, you said late summer for the Sun River?
For Sun River, and the delay there is just because of the time lag on getting equipment, the whole supply chain.
Okay.
We're all challenged with.
And will we get the equipment is always the question now.
Correct, yeah.
And then somebody to drive too.
So Dave, to do the subscription piece that Chad was, to peel that off and do that today, what does that look like in terms of a motion? Or, can we make a motion if we have no document that
Sure,
that
and we can
describes
get
it?
an order that'll comport with that.
Okay.
Absolutely, you could make that motion. If it's approved, we'll get an order to you as early as Wednesday.
So, what would that, what would be the phrasing on that? Move approval of subscription service in the new rural zone for Cascade Disposal.
If I can interject on the question, direct to Dave. So the order addresses each of those exhibits, and I would have to modify the exhibits for Cascade service area to include the yard debris collection in both the rural and distant rural zones. And I'll have to kind of reformulate that exhibit based on that, because the two options were either just Sun River or everything with the glass, commingle, and yard debris. So it's a matter of reconfiguring those two exhibits, and that's pretty straightforward to do. The order itself, and I kind of continue with the practice Tim had suggested. He's done this for years. Even though we would only be changing the rate structure for Cascade Disposal, if you look at that order, it addresses all of the service areas, including Republic Services. Tim felt that was a better housekeeping thing for him over the years, to be able to refer to a single order with all the current rates on it, rather than doing piecemeal order changes every time there's a new order that comes up. So I just have to kind of reconfigure what exhibits, I think it's B and C look like.
So you could still make the motion, and I think what Chad is saying is, yeah, we just have to work on the exhibits to that order.
Correct.
And the practice has been to republish the full schedule each time, even if
Yeah,
there's
that
only a
way you
small
don't have
change.
those rate sheets scattered over a number of orders. It's like I said, Tim felt that was a really efficient way for him to keep track of things.
Yeah, because you just need to go to the last one, and it's a full set
Exactly, yeah.
of numbers. Well, so you're proposing a subscription service for yard waste pickup, is that?
I think it would be, I think it would be a great opportunity to move that piece forward right now, to have an impact in the upcoming fire season. Because I just heard that, we could have, that could be up and running this spring, which is, as we remember from last year, the key time of year when people are doing yard debris burning, if they don't have, easy access to other options. And it is this year in particular, it's going to be a real risk of unwanted ignition out on the landscape in Deschutes County.
So that $7 a month number may be different, I'm just thinking, so, because if it was proposed to be changing the whole zone and having the other recycling associated with it, maybe that,
I'll have to have the conversation with
Yeah.
Cascade Disposal before we do commit to that $7 a month service, just doing the subscription for yard debris and foregoing the glass and commingle
so
proposal.
yeah, it might be different number.
I mean,
We don't have that
would it be-
information
yeah,
today,
like,
or-
it is a specific set of trucks, like
Maybe
the
not,
two
I'm
aren't,
just.
the two aren't that, I mean, my impression is that the commingle and glass is not really intertwined with the yard debris collection kind of operation very much.
Are they on alternate weeks? Would they- So they're on alternate weeks, so the truck serves both purposes.
Okay.
So it's employee, if employee's job isn't balanced out with that alternating week, then it's different utilization of the manpower. So as I said, we don't have this information. I mean, I don't know if there's more information to be shared today and I'm supportive. I mean, maybe some people are going to
I
be,
really want to move.
maybe
I-
20
I
bucks a
think
month is going to be fine for people, yeah.
Legal will clean it up, and Chad can check, and so we do have something going ahead.
But if it really is supposed to be, best, if it's best done as a package deal, then I think that the urgency of getting the yard debris collection available to people, maybe that's enough to move the whole package right now, including the glass and commingle. Because, I mean, it absolutely is another cost on customers. Again, I would argue that we are paying for that stream of waste if we are having to dig, more landfill hole sooner, just like someone will have to pay to have collection, at their residence. But we are paying. People, our community is paying for that waste stream either way. So I really don't see $51 a year as enough of a justification to delay moving forward with that piece. And clearly, the yard debris collection subscription option is urgent. So, I guess I could, in that frame of mind, I guess I could make a motion authorizing, under Order 2022-015, authorizing rate and service changes for all of Cascade Disposal's franchise district as currently proposed under Exhibits B and C, and, specifically focusing on the addition of commingle and glass as a universal service in an expanded rural service zone for an additional $4.25 per month. Distant rural rates and services will be normalized to revised rural universal rate, resulting in some variation of rate changes as shown on the attached table. And then adding subscription yard debris collection in the expanded rural service zone at a rate of $7 per month.
Okay, so we don't have a second for it.
I do support proceeding with subscription service for yard
Right.
waste at this time.
Okay, so do you want to make that motion?
I mean, I'll make a motion to, update the order for future meeting for yard waste subscription service.
Subscription, yes. Okay.
Fine, I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
And what is our timeframe for doing a more expanded public outreach and then bringing back the glass and commingle for the rural zone?
I don't know, Chad, can we do that in a month if you
Oh,
get
I
out?
would think so. I can definitely get with Morgan this afternoon or tomorrow morning and
Okay.
formulate a press release. I think that's the first big step, is just getting the word out there a little bit better than through the public hearing process here.
Okay, excellent, because, yes, I like the word subscription in today's world. Universal, it's just whatever. It's just an extra $5 every time you fill up. It's just an extra $10 every time you fill up. I mean, right now, truly, something I was going to buy at the market that I've been buying forever is now doubled in price. It's now $7 instead of $3.50. And if anybody sees Friskies cat food for less than 95 cents, that's actually on the shelf, yeah, I mean, it's amazing when you try. There's certain things, and they're just like gone now. So anyway.
Friskies cat food, okay.
I
I'll make a
know.
note of that.
Friskies, I know, I can't find it. And Safeway had none, not one can. And anyway, so, all right, so we voted, we're good? And you're gonna get out with Morgan and
Yeah,
we're,
so a month from now was mentioned.
yes, a month.
Yeah, so assuming Cascade Disposal is agreeable to the offering the subscription yard debris service independent of the universal glass and commingle collection, we can move forward with a revised order.
Correct.
Okay,
And that would be perhaps as quick as Wednesday?
I can probably bank something out.
You do it as a-
Tomorrow morning.
Bring it back, okay.
Can it come back on consent then?
Yeah, or it can be an additional add-on item.
Okay.
Either
all right.
way.
Okay,
It
thank
could be
you.
as a consent, but you probably just want to have it as an additional item,
Okay,
since the agenda's already final.
that's true. All right. So Wednesday, add-on. Item number 2, let's see, who are we going to have representing item number 2? Looks like Cody Smith. Is Cody available? There you are. Cody, thank you.
Good afternoon. So the road department solicited for bids for the supply and delivery of striping paint for calendar year 2022. The work under the contract will include furnishing 25,000 gallons each of yellow and white high build waterborne striping paint for road department operations in calendar year 2022. The bids were received on February 23rd. 2 bids were received. So before you this afternoon is the notice of intent to award contract in the amount of $525,000 to the Sherwin-Williams Company. As always, issuance of the notice of intent to award will begin the 1-week protest period for interested parties. to contest award of the contract, and if no protests are received during that period, the contract would be awarded administratively. Just a couple notes I'll add. Roughly 15% of the paint that we purchase every year is used by our striping crew to provide striping services for other local agencies in the region. Those include Crook County, Jefferson County, cities of Redmond and Madras, work that we perform under the Central Oregon Public Works Partnership Agreement. I'll also add that this is a approximately 22% price increase over the price we paid per gallon for striping paint last year. And lastly, this contract can be renewed. So the contract, as it stands presently, is for a 1-year period. It can be renewed for up to 2 additional years. That would generally assume that the price of paint remains stable, which is not what we've experienced over the last several years. So we've had to go out for bid and renew this contract every year. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
So Cody, what did we pay last year, just for the sake of math?
Last year we paid $8.60 a gallon.
$8.60 a gallon, huh? Wow. And the other bid was considerably higher. At least it was lower than the estimate.
Yeah, the second bid we received was, I believe, was around $15 a gallon.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? A motion?
Move approval of document number 2022-121.
And I will second it.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Chang?
Yes?
Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
So one question real quick is the road engineer. Is there any guidance coming out through ODOT or Federal Department of Transportation with the new technology on vehicles, kind of lane following and all that? Anything associated with the painting and the stripes?
Specifically in terms of striping, not presently. What actually dictates standards for pavement markings is the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and that's actually a federal publication, so it's applicable in all 50 states in the United States. That document is presently being updated. We don't anticipate the new version of that coming out till probably around this time next year at the soonest. We do know that in the draft version of that we saw last year, there were provisions in there for increasing the widths of roadway stripes in general, and that primarily was to accommodate the camera systems for autonomous vehicles. That provision right there got a lot of pushback from road agencies across the nation because it was effectively doubling the width of striping in virtually all cases on all roads. And so there was
much paint.
Yeah, so a lot of the comments that were given on that were asking that only be applied on the interstate system, on state highways, on higher volume roads, and not so much on lower order type, lower volume roads. But what the actual final rules are going to look like, we don't know at this point. That's still under discussion amongst the various state DOTs and the members of the committee that puts together the MUTCD.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you, Cody. Okay, item number 3. I believe that must be you, Cody.
It is, yes. So next one is in regards to the supply and delivery of asphalt oil for our chip seal operations for calendar year 2022. So the road department solicited for bids for this work. The work would include furnishing 2,000 tons of hot liquid asphalt oil, as well as 300 tons of emulsion asphalt for chip seal operations in calendar year 2022, which will include approximately 75 miles of county roads, as well as 4 miles of city streets in the cities of Bend and Redmond and Sisters this year, again, under the Central Oregon Public Works Partnership Agreement. So bids were received on February 2nd. Only one bid was received. Before you this afternoon is a notice of intent to award letter in the amount of $1,654,250 to Albina Asphalt. Once again, issuance of the notice of intent will begin a 1-week protest period. If no protests are received during that period, the contract would be awarded administratively. With this contract, this is approximately 25% increase in our price per ton for asphalt hot oil over our previous contract. Our previous contract we entered into in 2019. That contract was good for 3 years. So we put it out to bid again early this year. Under our old contract, we were paying about $560 a ton for hot asphalt oil. Under this contract, now we're paying $700 a ton. This contract is renewable through the end of calendar year 2024. We would only contemplate doing that if oil prices remain stable, which we don't anticipate they will. So we will probably be putting this out to bid again next year to hopefully oil prices have stabilized or maybe gone down a little bit at that time. With that, I'll hand it back to the board chair.
Thank you, Cody. Actually, they bid on this before Ukraine was,
Invaded?
yes. So truly, oil has really gone up.
People have been anticipating that invasion for a little while, so.
Truly, okay. Commissioner DeBonne, did you have a comment? Did I interrupt?
Is this asphalt delivered via rail to Central Oregon?
In this case, it is. I believe it is. Delivered via rail, so it goes to Albina's facility in Madras. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure if they receive it by rail or by tanker truck at the Madras facility, but we receive it here in Deschutes County via tanker truck in the case of Albina, from their facility in Madras.
Yeah, so wherever it's coming, I just know it's good to get it as close as possible by rail, because that's the higher volume transport, so just wondering the big picture. So, yeah, with that, I'll move approval of document number 2022-120.
Second?
Any further discussion?
No.
Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you, Cody. Now we go to item number 4. And I believe I see your name on that item also.
There's also me, yeah.
We tried to make your
Coordinated.
life much happier today.
Yeah, and I'm gonna
Cost
share my
effective.
screen here. Give me one moment. Okay, can everyone see the map I have up there on the screen?
Yes, we
And this, I believe, is also page 41 in your agenda packets. So during development of the US 20 at Tumalo project, which includes the construction of the new roundabout at the intersection of Highway 20, Cook Avenue, and O.B. Riley Road, the project advisory committee, which was composed of business and property owners in Tumalo, as well as representatives from the county bicycle and ped advisory committee. One of the strong recommendations that came out of that group was to provide an alternative crossing for bicycle and pedestrian traffic across Highway 20 in Tumalo, other than the roundabout itself, which the roundabout itself will include crosswalks and rapid rectangular flashing beacons to get bikes and pedestrians across at that intersection. But there was a strong recommendation from that group to provide an alternative form of crossing to get that kind of traffic across Highway 20. So through that process, an alternative was chosen that included a multi-use path that would cross under Highway 20, generally aligned with the right-of-way of 4th Street. which doesn't connect to highway. The right-of-way connects to Highway 20, but 4th Street itself doesn't actually connect to Highway 20. But basically for a multi-use path that would cross Highway 20 north of the roundabout, and then would provide connectivity to Bailey Road on the south and west side of Highway 20. So going back a couple of years ago, at that time in project development, ODOT did not have the funding to add that facility to the project. Last year, early last year, with the county's receival of $1.25 million in COVID relief funds through the state, through the Federal Highway Administration, it was determined that between the county and ODOT that we now had the funding that we could add this multi-use path back into the project. So the agreement before you is to do just that. It's to deliver the Tumalo multi-use path project. So how this is intended to be delivered is the undercrossing structure on Highway 20 has already been incorporated into the US 20 Tumalo to Cooley Road project that ODOT's anticipating having out for bid. I believe this June is right now the current bid schedule, current schedule for getting that project out to bid. So separately right now, ODOT in the county are kind of fast tracking the design for this multi-use path that would connect up to that undercrossing structure with the ultimate intent of the multi-use path being out to bid and under construction basically simultaneously with the roundabout project. One component of the project that we've included with that is improvements to 4th Street. So presently 4th Street in Tumalo, the full width improvements and sidewalk on both sides of 4th Street presently ends at Bruce Avenue, which is, I don't know if you can see my cursor very well, but it's towards the right side of the page there. So the one component of this project will be making those improvements on the block of 4th Street between Bruce Avenue and Wood Avenue, building the road out to full width and including sidewalks, so we have that pedestrian bicycle connectivity from Cook Avenue in the central area of Tumalo there over to the terminus of the multi-use path. So from there, the multi-use path would continue west within the existing right-of-way for 4th Street, where again there's presently no road located there, to that undercrossing structure to go under Highway 20. Then on the west or south side of Highway 20, that multi-use path will parallel Strickler Avenue, where it will then connect to Bailey Road, as shown there on the screen. The purple you're seeing on this picture here, that's all the improvements that are slated with the roundabout project on the highway and on the local road system there. So the $1.2 million that's anticipated for this project is currently included in the road department's road CIP budget for our current fiscal year. The total funding we had received in COVID relief funding we had received from Federal Highways was $1.25 million. The current estimated project cost for this, including the improvements on 4th Street, is $1.2 million. So it's actually slightly under the amount of COVID relief funding we received and budgeted. So with that, before you this afternoon is the intergovernmental agreement with ODOT for this project. ODOT is currently designing the project, and they would be delivering the construction of the project. Current timeline, again, we anticipate having the multi-use path project out to bid in April of calendar year 23. With that, are there any questions?
Cody, this seems that it's less than what I thought. I was part of that advisory group. I really thought it was more than 1.2 million. Maybe, maybe I just remember incorrectly. But
well, once again, and Commissioner Adair, you were on the advisory committee. The $1.2 million under this agreement is just for the path itself, the actual undercrossing structure on Highway 20, which off the top of my head, I don't remember the exact estimated dollar figure just for that, but that's that structure was included in those prior conversations that we're having a few years ago. That has since now been wrapped into ODOT's project. They already have secured funding for that structure, and they'll be building that structure with the roundabout project itself.
Okay,
So the
now I get
1.2
it.
we're
That
talking
makes
about
sense.
today is just for the pathway and then also for these improvements on 4th Street.
Okay, that's what it is then, because I was going like, oh, I remember they were worried about would we have enough funding or not, so, okay. Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions?
Cody, off the top of your head, do you have a handle or a grasp on the land ownerships and the zoning to the, what would that be? That would be to the south of this bike path and to the south of Highway 20?
You're talking about in particular like this section?
Yeah, and I mean, and ranging even farther south as well. I'm just trying to get a sense of, how much, whether someday there's going to be substantial residential development on that side of the highway or not.
Well, I guess one thing, we've already seen quite a bit of residential development there in Tumalo. The aerial that's with this map is not the latest and greatest aerial. These smaller lots here that I'm kind of circling my cursor around, those have all been built out. There's homes that now exist on all of those.
Right.
I guess another important thing to note is that this corridor, Cook Avenue, then to 7th Street to Bailey Road is on the Twin Bridges State Scenic Bike Route.
Right.
So it's actually designated as a state scenic bike route, and I mean that was one of many reasons why BPAC was really pushing for an alternate bike and pedestrian crossing for Highway 20 at this location, just given the popularity of the state scenic bike route.
Yeah.
In terms of any other residential type development further south of this, I'm not aware of any. I couldn't really speak to that, but those were kind of some of the prevalent reasons right there. Providing that connectivity to, the south or west portions of Tumalo proper to everything, all the school and all the other services that are on the other side of the highway there, coupled with the state scenic bike route going through through the project area here.
Right. No, thank you. Yeah, I definitely had a sense of the kind of like bigger picture recreational cycling use through this area, but just getting getting an understanding of that new subdivision, in that curve of Bailey, and it's helpful to understand how people who live in the immediate Tumalo area might be coming and going through this bike path. So thank you.
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll move approval of document number 2022-086.
And I'll second it.
Any other discussion? Mr. Chang?
Yes.
Mr. DeBonne?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you, Cody.
Thank you.
So that was 23, right? It wasn't this year.
April
In
20.
terms of getting it out to bid for construction, right? We anticipated construction to be completed by the end of calendar year 23.
Okay, completed by the end. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, item number 5. Facilities Department. Lee, thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. For the record, Lee Randall, Facilities Director, and thank you so much for having me here today. I appreciate being able to talk about our staffing levels for the Facilities Department. The request that we have for your consideration is for one additional FTE as a Maintenance Specialist 2 position, and in the agenda request, I provided some information specifically about the department in general, the services that we provide and locations, the size of our current maintenance team, some of the growth that's driving the need for a greater capacity, and then we can follow up with any questions that you may have. In terms of where we provide services, we work from Lapine to Sisters to Redmond, and of course Bend, and approximately 40 different sites or locations or buildings, and around 500,000 finished square feet. And that doesn't include, operational buildings that don't necessarily have folks in them per se. Our team is made up of, on the maintenance side, 10 team members. 3 of them are focused specifically on landscape and outdoor work, and then we have 7 that are focused on building-related maintenance, and then a supervisor that oversees both teams. The last time that we added an additional FTE was in 2016, and that was an electrician, and that has worked out very well in helping us respond to maintenance issues as they come up and provide insight on remodel projects and construction. As you hear all the time and we're all experiencing, there's a great deal of growth across the county, and of course that affects our team as well as we support the other county departments that are providing services directly to the public. And specifically in terms of growth of facilities, over the last few years we've added the large building in Sisters and the sheriff's substation there, the North County campus, which we're currently under design for remodel, as well as providing maintenance to the tenants that are currently in place and just overall maintenance on those buildings. We've also added the community service shop, and adult parole and probation is currently under expansion. And then, of course, we're looking forward to a courthouse expansion. During the development of all these projects, there's always added resources that are needed from the maintenance team, whether it's evaluating what the remodel project impacts might be, or looking at what the best finishes or approach for mechanical or electrical systems could be. And so as we look at those projects and they're under development, there's added input that's needed from our team. So in a nutshell, that's kind of I think the background for this request and for your consideration, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Okay, any questions?
Just when you were talking about the different topics, you mentioned the courthouse. Was there clarity on courthouse remodel dollars from the legislature? Kind of off topic from this, but did you know offhand? Oh, yeah, well,
I believe so, but I think if...
was it approved, I guess?
I'll let her respond.
Yes.
There we go.
We're awaiting signature of the bill where
Yeah.
those dollars are, and once,
And who are you?
for the record, Whitney Hale, Administrative Services.
Fancy short hair, though, yeah. No, that was just that concept. And then, yeah, it's exciting to know that, yeah, we've got a great team there, and getting, you've been able to work with one down from the previous, and getting back to that number is probably the right place to be right now. A lot of big projects going on. Facilities are in great order. Projects like the roof. I heard somebody walking on the roof today earlier. Maybe that was you.
It was me, along with our project coordinator.
Yep.
And he's gearing up for one of our largest roof replacements to date. And so you'll all get to enjoy that process and more folks on the roof. Speaking of that, I like to joke that Nick has moved buildings and he experienced a re-roof there, and now he gets to go through it all
Oh,
again.
there you go. They're following them.
We'll have more information and updates for you, but we appreciate your patience while that project's underway.
Did someone replace Dan then?
We have not finished that replacement yet, no.
I thought he would probably be hard to replace.
It's been a challenge, yeah.
Yes. I sent him a note. Okay, that's what I was afraid of. But you said you have one supervisor that handles the landscaping and the building related?
Correct, and that's Brian Hayward, and he oversees those two teams, a total of 10 folks on those teams, and looking hopefully to add another one if the board supports that. And then we also have a custodial supervisor who oversees not only our 7-person team, and that's Jason McCullough, he also oversees all of our contracted work. And so currently our square footage is probably about half and half. And so even though he has 7 folks on his team, on any given night, we could have 20 or more folks working in our buildings, performing cleaning, so.
Okay. Great. Any other questions, Commissioner Chang?
No questions.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Well, so I'm supportive of this position. Is this going to be for the fiscal year or as soon as it's approved, or?
It's for this current fiscal year, and then it'll be included in next year's budget, of course.
Yeah, next year's.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm supportive of bringing it back if we're going to put it in a future budget, or board meeting, I mean.
Yeah, I'm supportive as well. I'm guessing this would be a consent agenda item on Wednesday?
Could be a resolution. I don't know about Wednesday because the agenda's already,
All
it'd
right.
have to be another item for Wednesday, otherwise it could bleed into next week.
Okay.
16th.
We would bring
16th.
it back on the 16th. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
On the
And it
16th.
could be a consent on the 16th.
Got it.
Great.
That sounds good to me.
And it does sound good to me too, and I do hope that we're able to, at some point in time, hire another Dan.
Yep, for our project manager position.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Anyway.
All right. Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
Dave. Thank you for joining us. Okay, item number 6, our county goals and objectives. It must be Whitney.
Thank you, Commissioner Adair. For the record, Whitney Hale, Administrative Services. Before you today, we have draft fiscal year '23 goals and objectives for your discussion and consideration. Staff initially brought an earlier draft to you about a week ago, and following the board's discussion at that time, followed up and made a few adjustments based on, some wordsmithing to one of the drafts that we discussed earlier. I did bring a red line copy with me today because I thought it might be easier for the board to just see the changes that had been made. So I'll go ahead and pass those out, but I'm here for your feedback and discussion of these goals and objectives.
It looks like we're getting it to fit on one page, so that's always a goal and an objective at the beginning of that also.
The font looks like my new laptop. It's so teeny.
Well,
Thanks, Whit.
Thank you.
So as the board will recall, this is the version that has a goal related to housing broken out and a few minor adjustments to language throughout, which you can see in track changes.
It's really great to see the red line version.
That helps me as well.
Yeah.
It kind of tends to blend together when it's not, but the board has feedback on any of those changes, or if this looks like we're close.
I think these are really good changes, and they help us get it on one page.
We could have gone down to font size number 2 or something really teeny,
I
but
did,
this
you know,
seems like
we
it's
ditched the logo per board direction. We've shortened things up, so.
good.
so just, one of the statements, the third bullet for housing and stability, it's just, kind of wordy relative to my view of us as a government. We're a county. We support the people in the county. So the previous bullet says, support actions to increase housing supply. And I guess my point is we could probably just leave it right there. I mean, we don't need to pull it if you don't want. But collaborate with partner organizations to provide adequate supply of short-term and permanent housing and services to address housing insecurity. Just seems extraneous, but just needed to say it.
I just heard of the story of someone moving to Corvallis, and they actually feel like it's worse there than trying to come here. And they're now looking at something 20 miles away. But yeah, I think it's a bit of a problem all over the country for housing.
So it's the moment to kind of finalize it? Is that a kind of a vote for the minutes? Is that what we're looking for?
Yes.
If the board is comfortable, that would be great, and staff will proceed and finalize these and distribute to departments.
Great.
I move approval of the FY 2023 goals and objectives for the county as outlined here.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Whitney. Okay, now we have a board order. Looks like Anthony will be leading this.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mr. Lilac, Mr. Doyle. For the record, Anthony Regini, Principal Planner, Community Development Department. As you noted, Chair Adair, this is a set of board orders. File numbers are on the screen. This is a proposal by AT&T to establish a wireless telecommunications facility. There was a hearing before a hearings officer. The hearings officer issued a decision approving the facility, and then a timely appeal was filed by Mr. Gary Sherman. The property itself is located approximately 7.5 miles east of the city of Bend. If we could pull up the location map.
So just as a point of disclosure, so AT&T is a cell phone provider, and I'm on the statewide executive communications committee, and AT&T is also providing FirstNet, which is emergency communications across the country. And so I've just been in meetings where the dots have been on a map, and this is probably one of those dots. So just a perceived, situation I've been in. I don't, I'm disclosing it now. I don't know that it matters in this case specifically, but I've been in some meetings where that's one of the dots that was proposed.
Thank you, Commissioner DeBonne. So again, this particular facility is located approximately 7.5 miles southeast of the city of Bend. The specific location I've got on the screen, it's a sort of an interesting section or piece of Oregon Department of Transportation, or ODOT, right-of-way. Mr. Sherman's property is that one there to the south on K-Bar Road. The project details will include, if the hearings officer's decision is the final decision, it will include a 155-foot tall monopole, equipment cabinets, generator, all within a 50-foot lease area. Again, Mr. Sherman submitted a timely appeal of the hearings officer's approval and argues a number of issues that he would like the board to address. Mr. Sherman believes that the landscape management combining zone provisions apply, that the hearings officer ignored Goal 5, and that the appropriate use category is not the highway project that the hearings officer categorized the use as, but rather as a utility facility necessary for public service. Mr. Sherman is also concerned that this particular ruling by the hearings officer sets precedent. I did correspond to Mr. Sherman this morning, and although it's not part of his application materials or appeal materials, if the board hears it, he would like to have the board hear it full de novo. As I noted in my staff memo, staff is recommending the board not hear this matter. As I explained in the staff memo, there are actually two land use clocks associated with this particular application. We have the local 150-day clock, which the board is familiar with. We also have a federal shot clock, which is different than the 150-day clock, primarily because there is no 30-day completeness check that we have with our 150. So for this reason, the federal shot clock ends on May 2nd, rather than the local 150-day clock or state 150-day clock, which ends on May 30th. And so while certainly the board could hear this in time to issue a decision by May 2nd, it would be a tight fit. And because the applicant prevailed with the hearings officer, it's not certain that they would agree to any open record period. So again, in staff's opinion, there's an issue with the shot clock. The decision by the hearings officer can be supported by the record, and both parties were well represented at the hearing. And with that, staff is available for questions.
Anthony, do we have any sense of how many structures like this there are around Deschutes County? I mean, is this a very, very, very uncommon thing, or is this a very common thing?
It's so uncommon that this is the first of its kind that I'm aware of. So this question was really the first time that we'd had to address as a staff, well, what happens if a utility facility is in ODOT right-of-way? What statutes, what local codes apply, what building codes apply? And so to my knowledge, this is a very unique sort of first impression type project. In my 16 years, this is the first I've seen in an ODOT right-of-way for something of this scale.
Thank you for characterizing how unique this is, this particular application in this particular kind of location. But, I mean, I was also just trying to get a sense of how many telecommunication towers there are around the community. 'Cause,
Yeah.
Here, like, on the west side of Bend, they dress them up as trees. And,
Yes.
most observant people can tell that it's not a real tree. But there's a good handful of those.
We have a number of wireless telecommunication facilities in the county. However, they're not typically placed in ODOT right-of-way, which is what makes this
Yeah,
one unique.
okay.
So typically, we see them EFU zone or R10, and you'll have a land use application that goes with it. And so again, what makes this one unique is the fact that it's in an ODOT right-of-way.
But what about that landscape management?
Yes.
I got the hearings officer report because I'm like going, well, my neighbor on 126 had to use a certain color for his barn,
Correct?
his hay barn, and I'm going like, but they can put a tower right next to the road. I mean, usually you see them in the distance, I do believe.
Yeah, and in
So-
this particular case, so understand, commissioners, our landscape management combining zone, there are sort of two broad categories, and this is staff's interpretation of the code, where landscape management, the provisions of the LM zone apply. New structures or exterior alterations of structures which require a building permit, and then all agricultural structures. So in this particular case, there's a provision in the OSSC which states essentially that facilities in a public right-of-way do not require a building permit. So we have an email in the record from Randy Scheid, our building official, confirming that this facility does not require a building permit. For this reason, the provisions of the LM zone, from staff's perspective and the hearings officer, those do not apply.
So I was going to ask about that too. So we don't have anything in the code that says that this is regulated in any way. So, because you mentioned the deference, if we could study this, get real serious about it, but we really don't have anything other to evaluate it by.
Well, I think it's also sort of two different parts to this. I'm going to start with the LM side of it. Again, because a building permit's not required, that whole chapter doesn't apply. And so unless the board were to come to a different conclusion that all structures, regardless of a building permit, are subject to LM zone, that's sort of where we stop. It doesn't apply, and therefore the 30-foot height limit, colors that Commissioner Adair mentioned, those don't apply. The difference piece, I was talking with Adam this afternoon, it really just depends on the arguments that are presented by the parties on whether or not the county would receive deference. And so it's difficult to say at this point, not knowing what arguments would be presented by AT&T on one hand and Mr. Sherman on the other, whether or not LUBA would ultimately find that the board would receive deference.
So a building permit is for building, but this is a antenna tower. I mean, is there a difference there?
Yeah.
Because an antenna tower would have to be engineered for safety and resiliency, I guess, for conditions.
Sure.
So, but then we say it's not permitted in a building permit, I guess.
Right.
It'd still be engineered.
In this particular case, there was a citation to the OSSC, which.
What's OSSC?
It's 101.2.2.1.
What's the acronym?
Oregon State Specialty Code.
Oh, okay. Yep.
I'm looking at
Sure,
Nick, 'cause I
understood.
think that's
Yep,
right.
no, understood.
And so there are special exemptions for structures in right-of-way, public right-of-way. And I see Adam has turned on, so he can correct me if I'm wrong. But there are special exemptions for structures in right-of-way, and that's ultimately what the building official ruled. Because of that exemption, a building permit's not required, and because a building permit's not required, the LM zone doesn't apply. And I welcome any wisdom from Mr. Smith.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Adam Smith, Assistant Legal Counsel. I think Anthony correctly described the situation. There has been debate about whether or not this piece of property should be considered right-of-way, which thereby dictates whether or not the building codes in this particular case. I mean, there are several difficult questions that all relate to one another in terms of how this case is processed. I think going back to Anthony's initial comments, it's more of a question of whether or not the board wants to utilize its resources to host a second local appeal on all of those same issues, understanding the shot clock implications. And again, as Anthony noted, the federal shot clock is a little bit different in how it operates compared to our state shot clock. In this case, it's a shorter deadline. And my recollection is if we miss that deadline, the project is deemed approved. And so it's not even the state deadline. If we miss it, then that provides an applicant an opportunity to file a writ and to go ask the circuit court to make a decision on the land use application. My recollection is the federal clock for telecommunication towers is different. And if you miss the deadline, it's deemed approved. So to me, it's more of a question of whether or not these are compelling policy issues that are impacting the county as a whole that the board wants to directly engage in. And then if the board does, staff will, of course, do whatever it takes to ensure that we issue that final decision by that deadline. But it will, it's doable, but it's tight. I mean, we would need to prioritize this project over other work efforts to ensure it's done on time.
So if it's denied at the Board of Commissioners, it's going to Land Use Board of Appeals?
Potentially.
Oh, is that another step, or is that a default step for the appellant, I guess?
If the board declines to hear, then the hearings officer's decision becomes the final decision of the county. So at that point, it's an approved facility, and then Mr. Sherman or others can appeal it to LUBA.
So more action would have to happen, okay.
But what I worry is that with allowing it, okay, so you're saying it's a right-of-way, so is AT&T going to look for more right-of-ways right next to the highway? I mean, is this like a special little loophole that happened, and it's going to continue on?
And at this point, Commissioner Adair, it's a great question. I don't have information from AT&T regarding other locations that they're searching for.
Well, I know I rode with my husband on the way to Burns, and he was driving, and my phone worked, AT&T worked the whole way. So I just wonder why they have determined they need a new tower. I think this is right before Dodge Road. I actually looked up the address on my phone so I'd get a feel for where it was at.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's out that way.
Yeah. And again, I don't have information on AT&T's future plans for other facilities.
Okay, well, I just had to ask
Sure,
because
absolutely.
I go like, okay, we can't paint our barn a certain color, but we can, this doesn't meet any of those, statutes, so it's okay. It just seems a bit unfair.
Commissioners, I recall planning directors, and Peter, you may recall, other planning directors have had this issue come up around the state. I think this is the first time we've experienced it, and I'm not familiar with whether or not their decisions have been appealed to LUBA or the courts to set any precedent. I'm not aware of that, but I don't think we're the only county to have addressed this. That's piece one. Piece two is this is ODOT's property, so that's an important piece. Piece three is if there are right-of-way issues that are under the county's jurisdiction, then our road department would have authority over that, of whether to even consider those or not. And I don't know if we've had those requests or not, but generally, right-of-way could come before the county's road department, just as other matters might in the road department. And then the whole issue of landscape management zone is so important because they need to be screened. It's not just colors, but screening, and how would we screen other facilities in the public right-of-way, which the whole purpose is to keep it clear for mobility. So a lot of issues to consider with with this appeal and similar issues.
Make it look like a 150-foot tall juniper. So I was just remembering there was another AT&T application out in Alfalfa Road, and which is probably the same service area as this, which is kind of deducing there, because it's kind of a big ring around where the antenna is, and that was probably this for the same reason. It was the application.
I recall that one. That was on a rural residential zone property,
Mhm.
and yeah, that was quite an application years ago.
How many
And
years ago
Anthony,
was it?
correct me if I'm wrong, but although we certainly can't speculate on AT&T or other telephone wireless providers' intentions going forward, this is a bit of a unique piece of property in that it's a large area that's adjacent to other ODOT right of way. There was a debate between the parties on whether or not this property should be considered right of way. I don't think we will find that throughout the entire county. I think it would be difficult to put a cell tower in a narrower, more traditional piece of property that is considered right of way. This was unique in that it was a large piece of land.
Can you give us a sense of the dimensions of that, the ODOT property that's adjacent to this right away?
I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. If I can go back to the PowerPoint, I can show you I can give you an idea. The lease area would cover approximately half of this triangular area that I'm calling out, and it's 50 by 50. So I'm going to go back to, just to give the commissioners an idea. So if you can see that on your screen, and this is, I think, what Adam is talking about, is the likelihood of having sort of this kind of sort of cutout adjacent to a highway. That just doesn't appear very often. Now, could it happen? I think certainly it could. However, that kind of excess land would have to be in a location that AT&T found viable for another tower, that they would need the service. So I think that's what Adam was getting at, is that this is somewhat unique in that when you look at the ODOT right-of-way, it's fairly linear, and then there's this triangular piece that sort of juts out from it. But again, I will say again for the record, I am not aware of AT&T's other plans with regard to other facilities.
Commissioners, Will Groves, I took a look. It's about a half acre in addition to what you typically expect beyond the regular linear right-of-way.
Another question I have is, so if AT&T wanted to work a deal with a private landowner to host this telecommunications facility, what does the land use authorization or land use permitting process look like for that?
Great question. So it really depends on the zone. In either case, whether it's exclusive farm use or Nick mentioned a prior project in the RR10 or even MUA 10, there is a land use approval for the EFU zone, and then there's a land use approval for RR10, MUA 10. In addition, though, and this is sort of, I think, where the commissioners are having some hesitancy, because it's not in a right-of-way, a building permit would certainly be required, and now the LM zone does apply. And so, depending on where it's located, if it's, again, regardless if it's EFU, RR10, or MUA10, there's a land use application that's necessary, and then any combining zones which are on top of that would also apply. Did that answer your question, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Okay.
And what, so what would be the implications of the LM combining zone applying to this? I mean, would they have to, screen or like otherwise conceal it in some way, or would they just flat out not be allowed to do the?
Well, no, they're certainly allowed to apply. The biggest criterion that affects, and in my career, I've only seen one cell tower in the LM combining zone, is because you're limited to 30 feet in height. So you're not allowed a height exception. That's very specific in our code. And so that is the primary limiting factor for wireless telecom facilities in the LM zone, is the 30-foot height limit. Screening and color is really, frankly, secondary to the 30-foot height limit when you consider the height of these towers typically. And so again, I worked on one, it was on top of a butte, and it was 30 feet, and that's all they needed. So they were fine with the 30-foot height limit.
Right.
In most other places, 30 feet is not likely going to get the job done.
Except when they're on top of a butte.
Exactly. Exactly.
So if AT&T is really interested in having this tower somewhere in that general vicinity, there basically isn't a private land option.
That is unclear. It's interesting, when you look at the two use categories that would apply, the first, there are two options really for the applicant. One is a utility facility necessary for public service, and one is essentially a highway project. As part of the facility necessary for public service, they're required to look at non-EFU zone properties in which to site a tower. That requirement does not exist for a highway project. In this particular case, the hearings officer found that this is a highway project. It fits within this, and again, this is a statutory use category. So my staff memo, when I mentioned that these use categories come out of statute and it's unclear whether or not the board would get deference, that's what I mean, is there are two potential categories, both come out of statute, and the hearings officer found that it's a road project. And for that reason, they're not required to look at other non-EFU zone properties in which to site the tower. Different criteria entirely.
What about on federal land? I mean, are uses like this permitted on federal land, or are they excluded?
Presuming they can secure the federal permits, yes.
Okay. Because I think that there's federal land in this general vicinity as well.
It was certainly brought up at the hearing that there are federal lands, and I don't know off the top of my head how close they are. According to AT&T, those properties were problematic from a permitting standpoint, and they don't quite cover the coverage area they needed, and that's all in the record. But I could not tell you how far away the BLM lands in this case are.
Right. And kind of one of the things I'm trying to get my head around is, is this tower going up somewhere in this neighborhood, in this general vicinity, no matter what? And then it's just a matter of, whose view shed is it blocking? Or is, without this kind of unique right-of-way situation, is this tower not going up anywhere near here? Because if the tower is going up somewhere in the neighborhood, no matter what, and it's just a question of, whether it's, one landowner's view that's blocked or another, then I think this is less an issue of I think this is less an issue of policy concern than if, there's basically no pathway besides this to have a tower anywhere in this vicinity.
Understood. And it's difficult to answer that question because, let's just say for the sake of argument, this facility was denied. AT&T would certainly look for another property. The question really becomes, is it a property that is under the county's jurisdiction, meaning EFU, RR10, MUA10, or is it on BLM land where we have no jurisdiction and it's in somebody else's view shed? So I believe that AT&T would look for another site. Whether or not it would be approved is a whole nother question. And frankly, whose view shed it would impact is another question.
Thank you.
Well, we're back to the same concept of could we do it justice with the shot clock, the time clock? That's kind of the problem I'm seeing here. We could study it, but we might kind of get in the way for a possible another appeal process.
Well, and again, just to sort of put everything out on the table, if the board decides to hear it, I have to have a minimum 10-day notice. It'd likely be more than 10 days because of your schedule. We have a hearing. Again, it's not clear to me that the applicant, because they prevailed at the hearings officer, would agree to the open record period. So worst case scenario, the record period, the open record period, the written open record period counts against the clock. And we'd have to have come back to you for deliberations and then have a final decision out by May 2nd. So again, as Adam said, we could absolutely do it and we would prioritize it. It's just going to be very tight.
looking at it right now. There's federal land pretty close to here, so.
So they got the decision on what, the 15th of February. The appeal was filed on the 28th, and we're sitting here today, and it's what, the 7th? So you definitely got it to us as fast as you could, which is good. But truly, it seems like, I don't know, is it going to go on, whatever we do?
In my opinion, given both AT&T's representations at the hearing and Mr. Sherman, I absolutely believe it'll go to LUBA.
You believe it will?
Yes, regardless if you hear it or not, I believe it'll go to LUBA. Again, that's just my opinion, not having talked to either party.
And it's really not clear whether we would get deference if we made a decision on this and then it went to LUBA anyway.
That's right.
I can add some, or shed some light on that. The only time so there are numerous different arguments that can be raised in front of the Land Use Board of Appeals. It's only one narrow type of argument when you're interpreting Deschutes County Code provision, and the provision only is in Deschutes County Code. There's not a corollary in state law that you receive deference. It's a different standard of review on numerous other types of issues that can be raised in front of LUBA to challenge a local government decision. And oftentimes, opponents and applicants both will craft their arguments in front of the Land Use Board of Appeals to avoid the deference issue, with opponents often raising arguments that are not entitled to deference, and then oftentimes applicants countering and saying, well, that's really just an interpretation of a local code provision and argued in a slightly different fashion, but you should still end up giving the deference. What ultimately happens, in my opinion, is that the Land Use Board of Appeals applies deference in those black and white cases where it's clearly an interpretive issue, and then in other times when they agree with the applicant and the county's interpretation. If they're not inclined to agree with that interpretation and an opponent has done their job in raising arguments that are fashioned in a different way, then LUBA can answer that issue in a different way, and then they don't end up giving deference. So to me, the need or the desire for deference in front of the Land Use Board of Appeals is less of a compelling factor that the board should be considering in whether or not you want to hear these appeals. Because as Anthony said, we really don't have any control over what the parties argue as a case goes forward, and it's often not dispositive of the final outcome. I would say it's rarely dispositive of the final outcome in front of the Land Use Board of Appeals that an issue is decided entirely because of deference to the local government.
Okay. Dave, is there anything you wanted to add on top of what Adam just said?
Well, he captured it very well. I would underscore the deference points that he's made, that LUBA does not give deference to local governing bodies unless they absolutely have to. They typically find a way to avoid deference.
I think after being up here a couple years, I think I would agree with you. Definitely feels that way anyway, as much as we care about our county.
So I could go either way on this. I mean, this is kind of hard for me. We could, it's a notch in the right of way, and it is an awkward situation knowing that, it possibly, no matter what we do, it could be overruled because it's just not under the county zoning. So, I just kind of see it like that. Or we could make an argument to go the other way that says, okay, this is why it needs to be treated as such. Yeah.
Chair Adair, it's your discretion to decide whether to call on people in the audience who are raising their hand or not.
Oh, can we do that?
Adam,
I
you
know
want to
that we
address
can-
that? I mean, typically we don't.
Yeah.
Or it's deciding
No,
whether or not you're.
The county commissioner's consideration on whether or not to hear a matter is limited to the record that was developed in front of the hearing officer, staff report, and the appeal application that's submitted in front of you. So I would caution against essentially reopening the record at this time.
Got it. Okay, well,
Thank you.
just to be clear, during regular board items, it's the discretion of the chair whether someone can do public comment out of public comment period.
Maybe a bit after the fact, but not truly. Okay. I know. I just, I think, oh my gosh, the fact that this is a special half acre of land and it just happens to be in this special spot, and it makes buying something so much trickier because, what if you've got a spot by you that could be developed for this? It adds a lot. So do we have, does anyone have a motion?
I can go either way on this as well.
Okay, so we have two, I can go either way.
Oh, no.
That's very consistent. Glad to hear that.
Commissioners, if I may weigh in?
Yes, Will, please do.
One of the things that you might entertain doing here, and I'm not recommending it specifically over other choices, is were you to either engage or not engage, you could watch how the process went through you and on to LUBA, and to the extent that you thought that outcome was unwelcome, that would be an opportunity to direct staff potentially to revisit the code and bring forward a code that either allowed or didn't allow an unwelcome option, or if you did, in fact, like how it turned out. So, one of the issues here, there is some issue that, that precedent might be set, and to the extent that that's something that you didn't approve of how it came out, or you wanted to revisit through a public process, that's something that we could take on for you.
That's what I was thinking about. Thank you, Will. I was just thinking, it makes sense that we definitely, if LUBA's going to take it one way or the other, but we really need to see what they do with it and how we want that. Can we change that in our county? Are we, with a public process, of course.
But that would only affect future proposals that are similar to this. It would not.
Be unique.
We would not be able to retroactively, look at LUBA's decision and then decide we wanted to.
That's correct.
Oh. It sounds like it's going to go there irregardless in this case, to me.
I mean, the fact that there is federal land in the vicinity and that's a whole other process, which might result in, in this telecommunications facility going up in the general area anyway. That does make me lean towards not wanting to hear this appeal.
Okay. Commissioner DeBonne?
Yeah, so with that discussion and the big picture here, so I'll move signature of Board Order 2022-016 declining to hear the appeal.
Is there a second?
Well, I'll second.
Is there further discussion? Well, thank you for bringing that up, because that's truly what I thought doing my research, that, okay, this is so unique, and yet, oh my gosh, what if, what is the precedent? So anyway, Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Anthony. Okay. I believe Caroline House is now.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, this is Caroline House, Senior Planner with the Planning Division as well. So the next item before you is another consideration, and in this case it's two appeals related to the Thornburg Destination Resort. The first appeal is for a site plan review, and the second appeal is for a tentative plan. So I was going to cover today, provide a high level of the resort, and then go into each of the appeals. And I believe we have to have separate motions for each appeal, so I've prepared orders to reflect the two different issues before you. So the review of the resort has a long history, as you probably have heard a couple times now. The first application was received in 2005. And that was for the conceptual master plan that was approved in 2006. After that, the resort came in for their final master plan approval, and that was initiated in 2008 and did not become final until 2018 after a number of court proceedings. And then this kind of puts us to where we are today. The resort is going through a series of tentative plan applications, site plan reviews, and modifications to implement their approved final master plan. And there's still current and ongoing litigation related to the recent site plan applications, modifications, and tentative plan approvals. So I am somewhat new to this project myself, so I was hoping to wrap my head around some of the key parts of this. So this is maybe a new slide that you haven't seen recently. But the final master plan approval, what you're seeing on the screen now is their drawing that kind of summarizes their master plan development. And in total, the resort includes 1,970 acres. There are up to 950 approved dwelling units, a 50-unit hotel, as well as 425 overnight lodging units. And then the resort will also include other resort facilities and community facilities, as well as 3 golf courses. And in total, the resort will have 1,293 acres of open space. And the golf courses do count towards the open space, I'll note that. And the other kind of component that I wanted to present today was related to the phasing of the resort. The 2 applications before you today are for Phase A, which is shown in yellow. And in total, the resort will be built out in 7 phases as approved under the final master plan approval. So the first appeal before you is 247-2222-000174-A. This is for a site plan review for a gatehouse, community hall, clubhouse, and a welcome center in Phase A1. A staff decision did approve the applicant's request. This was subsequently appealed. The hearings officer denied the issues on appeal and upheld the staff decision with a few additional conditions. And now that hearings officer decision has been appealed, and that's before you today. Anthony mentioned this during his presentation, but the county's procedural ordinance gives you 3 things to consider when deciding whether or not to hear an appeal. The first is the record developed, in this case, as part of the staff and hearings officer decisions, the notice of appeal submitted by the appellant, as well as you could take into consideration any staff recommendations. So I didn't do a bullet point for every issue on an appeal, but in this case, there are 22 different issues on appeal. The key issues include, but are not limited to, compliance with the final master plan, changes to the resort's water rights, and whether the subject application is inextricably linked to the pending appeals at the state courts. And staff is recommending the board not hear the first appeal because there's insufficient time on the clock. As you know, the county has a 150-day land use clock to complete the review, and tomorrow will be the 150th day, so there's insufficient time for an appeal hearing in this case. And the appellant was able to present all of their relevant evidence and at the hearing before the hearings officer as well. Looks like my slide might be out of order, but I am available for questions now.
Yeah, so just acknowledging that, I do support the hearings officer decisions in both of these matters, and I would support not hearing them at this time, and the time clock is real short, but even, it gets down to some pretty technical, appeal statements that we'll let it go on past us, is my thought.
I feel like at this point, these processes, it's extremely convoluted and complex, like many different layers. We're talking, one moment we're talking about this master plan level, and the next minute we're talking about, a specific phase, which I feel like makes it very difficult for the public to track what is actually going on, or what people are actually arguing about, or what's at dispute at this time. So I would love to just kind of ask a few basic questions so that we can sort of refresh for anyone who wants to track this process. What is actually at stake? What are the big questions being debated at this point with the project? And so if this is a good time to do that, I can go ahead and launch into that. As I understand it, there was a final master plan approved in 2008. We saw that in the slide presentation. Tiered from that, there is a fish and wildlife mitigation plan with conditions to mitigate impacts on fisheries habitats that needed to be met in order for the project to proceed. And if I understand correctly, many of the appeals, in the last 6 months to a year have really been connected with those fish habitat mitigation requirements, and so again, for the benefit of the public, it would be great to understand what water was offered to meet those mitigation requirements initially, and what water is being offered by the applicants at this point in time to meet those mitigation requirements. But because I think that's a lot of the questions surround that kind of what was ordered in the Fish and Wildlife Mitigation Plan, and what is actually being delivered at this point. So Caroline, are you able to unpack those questions a little bit, give us some kind of general background?
Yeah, I can give my best shot, and then some of my colleagues that have joined us today can probably chime in as well to the extent I haven't addressed your questions. I do see County Legal Counsel popped on. Adam, do you have anything to add before I provide kind of some basic information?
Nope.
Okay.
No, I'm happy to join in there with specific legal questions, but I think a number of Commissioner Chang's issues are best addressed by CDD at this point.
So I was going to start with, there currently are no changes proposed by the applicant for their water. That's one of the key issues that the hearings officer decision before you today speaks to in his decision. And the Oregon Water Resource Department is the state agency who has authority over water permitting. And the hearings officer restates that in his decision as well, and clarifies to the extent the applicant is not changing or proposing to modify, as long as that permit continues to be non-canceled, there are no, the county doesn't have jurisdiction to revisit that issue. I'll also add that the appellant does note that the applicant has submitted additional requests for water rights. And again, the hearings officer found that they're not asking formally for us to modify the final master plan to incorporate a new water use at this time. So if that does happen, that will likely trigger some type of modification at that time, but none has been requested at this time. Did you have anything?
Again, Will Groves, Planning Manager, just here for support. If you have additional questions, that was a great answer.
So there's there was mitigation water that was outlined early in this project, and from the applicant's perspective and from the hearings officer's perspective, there's no changes to the mitigation water that is being offered, and that mitigation water then the way the groundwater mitigation program works in the Deschutes Basin, that mitigation water then unlocks the opportunity to gain access to new groundwater supplies. That's the water that is under permit with Oregon Water Resources Department at this point in time.
Correct.
Okay. And that permit has not been canceled. Is that what you were saying?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. So there are mitigation requirements. The hearings officer says that they are still in place and that the applicant is meeting those, and they've been able to obtain permits for a water supply from Oregon Water Resources Department, and those permits are active.
Correct, and I'll go ahead and note too, the hearings officer also found that demonstration that they're meeting the mitigation requirements can be met by an annual reporting requirement, and that it's not necessary at the time of this this is a site plan approval in this case, so that was one of the key findings from the hearings officer on that particular issue, is demonstration with compliance with the mitigation requirements can be met through an annual report.
Okay. Okay.
I do have a question for someone in the building department. I was told maybe a month and a half ago by someone in the community that lives near the Thornburg that they're doing a lot of extensive work there. Now, do they have permits to do that extensive work?
I can get that one. Chair Adair, as you were previously cautioned in the prior matter, we have to be careful as you're making this decision that you're making that decision based on the record. We'd certainly be happy to follow up with you on that. I could go on at some length about that, but I want to, outside of legal counsel nudging me otherwise, I want to be hesitant. I'm hesitant to provide you information that isn't available in the current record.
Okay. I mean, we see this issue, what is it, 50 appeals later? And, the community is concerned with it.
Chair Adair, I'll just add that I think there were some issues raised on appeal regarding what amount of water has to be usable or available. But the hearings officer found at this point in time that they don't have to have usable or available water. So I don't know if that ties into your question, but I don't, like Will said, I don't want to introduce something in the record that hasn't already been raised by either the appellant or that's in the record from the previous decisions.
Okay. Thank you, Caroline.
Commissioners, if I may, Adam Smith, Assistant Legal Counsel. I want to explain CDD's caution on some of these procedural errors. As the board is well aware, this has been a fiercely contested project with many, many appeals being filed and lots of time and energy being spent by the county and the opponents and the applicants on land use matters in front of the Land Use Board of Appeals and the Court of Appeals and the rest. So CDD is being appropriately cautious in ensuring that we're not creating any procedural errors, which will just add more additional appellate steps. The sensitivity to committing any procedural fouls is really just to ensure a fair and equitable process for all of the parties as we're processing these applications, and our desire to ensure that no procedural errors are created, I think, is well warranted because of the history of this case.
Thank you, Adam. So you said it was 3 parts, but we're looking at the one part, and it says it actually, final action has to take place tomorrow, which is not possible?
Correct.
Okay. So do we need a separate recommendation then on that point? I mean, the staff is recommending insufficient time.
So, sorry, my memo, I think it's attached at the very end of your packet. So sorry if that's not in there, but the recommendation is to pass make a motion to pass the order declining to hear review of the first appeal.
Okay.
If I could just, ask a couple of other clarification questions. So this is, this question does relate to input that we're getting from, from the public, but it's also, I think, hopefully still within the scope of consideration of this appeal. Many people who write to us about this issue, I think, are under the impression that, we are making a new decision to approve or deny a project at this point in time. And my understanding is that a lot of what we're arguing about is not that, because we are not able to take back a final approved master plan and efficient wildlife mitigation plan, but rather more narrowly that we are arguing about whether the mitigation requirements are being, that were laid out in that framework are being met or not. I mean, is that accurate? That we're not working at the approve or deny a whole project level. We are really disputing very specific questions like, are our mitigation requirements being met or not?
So to speak to your mitigation question, in this case, the hearings officer found that that's going to be met by that annual report. So that was one of the outcomes or findings from the hearings officer decision. More broadly, a site plan review is generally looking at things like circulation on a site, so vehicular access, pedestrian access, more kind of on the ground level details. And stepping back, the final master plan was looking more broadly at the overall development. And now we're getting to the more individual details, lot size, how everything's going to cohesively be laid out in a way that meets the county's development standards.
But the mitigation water is pretty central to the appeal arguments that are laid out here.
Yes.
In the request to hear the appeal. Yes or no?
I could weigh in here. I think central to your question, this information is in the record, is how that water right will function. And in the record, it's demonstrated that water right has been under substantial attack through the OWRD process by the same appellants. And the hearings officer gave a full and complete hearing to that information. And I want to read you a paragraph from that I think is really helpful in understanding that. It's brief. The hearings officer takes notice that the Oregon Water Resources Department is the governmental body charged with administering water law in Oregon, not Deschutes County. Deschutes County has no authority to legally approve or cancel an Oregon water permit. That authority is within the province of the OWRD. LUBA appears to agree with that division of responsibility, citing Bauman versus Jackson County. 1992, LUBA held that the context of a state agency permits an application only needs to determine if a proposal can comply with obtaining the required state permits. The hearings officer finds that ultimately the questions of is there usable water for Thornburg will be determined by OWRD.
Thank you. Okay. I guess, kind of, what my final big question that I'm trying to get my head around is that question of deference. I mean, are we, as we look at this appeal request, are these issues of state statute, or are these issues of local code and regulation that we would get deference from LUBA on, or some combination of the above?
I would invite Adam to respond to that one, if he's available for that.
Yeah, yeah, I'm happy to. Commissioner, it's similar to the answer I gave on the previous project, that it's difficult to answer the deference piece because it's very much dependent upon the nature of the arguments that are raised in front of the Land Use Board of Appeals. In this case, however, I'm confident saying that I think it's highly unlikely that you will receive deference, at least on the mitigation water piece. That very same or very similar argument was raised in one of the previous Thornburg decisions regarding the golf course, with the applicant at that time arguing that it was interpreting the condition number 10, the mitigation issue, was essentially the same as interpreting Deschutes County Code, and the county should be afforded deference to their decision. The opponents argued that it was not interpreting a county code provision. LUBA ultimately decided that interpreting condition number 10 in that case, in that golf course case, did not invoke or otherwise require an interpretation of the county code provision, and so they did not provide any deference to the county's decision. However, they upheld the county's decision because they found that it was legally correct, that it was not an erroneous decision. So deference is really just the first step in the equation. It's deciding how a decision is to be made. It sets forth the analysis that the Land Use Board of Appeals needs to go through, but it's not outcome determinative. They still need to then go through that process. But to summarize, assuming that the arguments with these particular applications are the same or substantially similar to the way the deference question was raised in the golf course matter, I think it's highly unlikely that the Land Use Board of Appeals will provide deference to the county commissioner's decision, in which case there's no benefit to necessarily hearing this matter.
At least from the water mitigation, the mitigation water issues perspective.
On the narrow, yes, correct. On the narrow question of the water mitigation perspective, I do not think you are going to receive deference on how you interpret and apply that matter to this case. So you'll get the same, the hearing officer's decision would get the same treatment from the Land Use Board of Appeals that the Board of County Commissioners treatment would receive.
Got it. Thank you.
So I'll make a motion if we're ready to
I think so.
deny. So I'll move denying the review of the hearings officer decision on file number 247-21-637-TP and 247-21-948-A by order number 2022-011.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any more discussion? Commissioner DeBonne,
Yes.
Mr. Chang,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes.
Great discussion, though. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah, we actually have a second
Oh, that
one,
was
too,
just
that
the
we have.
first half of
Yeah,
it?
that's just the first half.
I was trying to do both, I
There's
thought.
one
Okay,
more.
okay.
Well, it had two.
Yep, so
Did you put on slide?
even though I thought, no, I got the other one right here.
Right, so if I may,
Sure.
Please.
the second appeal before you is 247-22-000175A. In this case, this is a tentative plan approval for 108 single-family dwellings in Phase A2. This had the same trajectory as the last application, where a staff decision was initially issued approving the tentative plan. That decision was appealed. The hearings officer denied the appeal and upheld the staff decision with a few additional conditions. And that hearings officer decision has now been appealed and is before you today. So again, the things you can consider as part of your decision to hear or not hear the appeal is the record developed as part of the staff and hearings officer's decision, the notice of appeal, and you can also consider a staff recommendation. In this case, there were 21 different issues on appeal, and I've highlighted the same three key appeal issues related to compliance with the final master plan, changes to the water rights for the resort, as well as the subject application being inextricably linked to the pending appeals at the state courts. Similar to the last appeal, staff is recommending the board not hear this one due to time constraints. There's not sufficient time to conduct an appeal hearing, and the appellant was able to present all of their relevant evidence at the hearing before this. So the board does have the option to hear the appeal, and you can also decide not to hear the appeal. A decision to not hear the appeal results in the hearings officer's decision becoming the county's final decision. and I'm available for any more questions.
So the clock on this one is actually March 16th.
Yeah, it's a little further out.
Yeah, next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Still only 9 days, though.
I know, there's no time. Okay. Is there any other discussion on this one? Adam, did you want to add anything?
No, I think very similar to the previous case. Of course, I'm happy to answer any questions, but similar issues on deference and certainly similar issues on timing. 1 week is near impossible.
And qualitatively, I mean, the issues that are the base of the appeal are the same as they're, okay. I just wanted to make
Yes.
sure I wasn't missing something.
They're very similar. I think there was one issue on appeal that did not make it from the previous one into this particular appeal.
Okay. Okay. I'll move approval of Order 2022-012, an order denying review of hearing officer's decision in file numbers 247-21-000537-SP and 247-21-001-009-A.
And I'll
Are
second
those
it.
the right numbers? Didn't you just say 0000175A?
009 is correct. 009A.
I tried to read it exactly from the page there, but
Okay, well, all right. Any further discussion? Commissioner Chang?
yes.
Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
The chair votes yes.
So the memorandum in the back does have another number in there, because I was trying to figure out what that number is, 247-22175A. Is that
Yes.
what you just asked?
Yeah, that's what the,
Yeah, 174 and
You just
175A.
showed
What are
us.
those?
Sorry, so yes, I can clarify.
Those are the appeal
So
number.
the appeals numbers that start with 24722 are the appeals to the board.
Yep, okay.
The ones in the order are the
So we're
related to the
responding to that
hearings
number.
officer appeal hearing.
okay, I just wanted not to make a mistake,
Absolutely.
truly not make a mistake. Okay. Great. So did we vote? Yes. Okay, we're good? Thank you,
Very good.
Carolyn.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Will. Okay, we now have other items. Peter?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the commission. For the record, Peter Gutowski, Community Development Director. I'm here before you to see if the Board of County Commissioners is comfortable to begin discussing two Planning Commission positions. The first, we have she's our current chair, Jessica Kiris, is available and has expressed interest for a second term, second four-year term. So that would be to June 30th of 2026. So that's a reappointment consideration. And I believe that the board met with Commissioner Kiris over the last several weeks just to follow up and have a conversation with her about her experiences and interest in the next four-year term. And then secondly, this week, the Board of County Commissioners with staff conducted interviews for an open position, an open at-large position for the Planning Commission. And that would complete an existing term to, that existing term would be for a till the end of, June 30th of 2024. So it would be just over a 2-year term. So I can certainly provide additional information or context if you would like, but I think I'll pause now and turn it over to you, Madam Chair, for how you would like to proceed regarding the at-large position as well as the reappointment consideration for Commissioner Kiris.
Okay, I think it would be good to go ahead with Jessica's, if we're all in agreement to have her reappointed for that additional 4-year term. That would make it simple, right? So,
Get that out of the way?
yes.
Yeah, I move reappointment of Jessica Kiris to the Planning Commission for another 4-year term.
And I'll second it.
Any other discussion?
I was able to have a good phone call with her and just kind of talk about the, the big picture and thank her for joining us. And now she's in the leadership at the, being the chair of this operation. So it's pretty exciting having her. So I'm honored to reappoint her.
Yeah, and it's really exciting that she is excited to step into that chair role and take the bull by the horns as we're moving into the comprehensive planning process. It'll be a big responsibility for a chair over the next couple of years.
And actually, outside of the box, what she does in her profession, I found fascinating. And talking to her about, she tries to help people, her clients, find a way to get back to work and realize that truly it's healthy to get back to work. And she works, that's what she does. And it was really, I was so glad that we had a conversation. So thank you for setting that up, Peter.
You're welcome.
So Commissioner Chang, how's your vote?
Yes.
And Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, definitely. Thank you. Okay, so now we have 3 people that we have for the next position actually replacing Les Hudson, who moved to the other side of the mountain. So I'm glad we're on the sunny side, that's for sure. All right, so we had a wonderful, amazing candidates, I might add. All of them were truly outstanding, and it's kind of, it's complimentary that we all thought each one of them could do the job on a different level.
So, it's exciting to be able to, talk to folks that are interested in serving their community. This is the Planning Commission. It's a, multi-year, kind of a big picture item, the land use associated outside of the city, urban growth boundaries. It sounded like there was, different choices, and then I went and interviewed, and I'm like, man, they're all good. And then I just kind of said, oh, this is be where I'd want to go, and now we're kind of 3 different suggestions of a selection here. But I'm sure we can work together and figure this out.
I'm sure we can.
So I had the opportunity during this the review of these candidates to sit on the panel with Chair Kiris, and we had the chance to discuss kind of the changes in the Planning Commission over time in recent months, and coming over the next year or so. And one of the things that really struck me or stood out to me from her description of the Planning Commission was the substantial loss of experience, deep experience. Les Jocelyn, Les Hudson, and a number of the other people who will be rotating out in the not too distant future. People who've served on the Planning Commission for years bring, just a tremendous amount of understanding, detailed understanding of land use and planning in our community. And what that emphasized to me was that we have all three of the candidates under discussion right now are people who have the right kind of, the right attitude and the right, temperament, to work together with the other planning commissioners, engage the community, make really good recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. But two of those three have the experience with planning processes and have the long-term tenure in our community, having lived here for, 20, 2 decades, 3 decades, to be able to really jump right in to this role at this critical moment right now that we have, where we're losing a lot of experience, and it would be a great benefit to the Planning Commission to replace that with additional experience. I think later on, after we've kind of provided some, replenished the depth of experience we have on the Planning Commission, there will be really good opportunities to bring newer people in, people who are newer to, detailed land use planning processes, people who are newer to our community and who've got a lot of energy and are, prepared to get up to speed and work with us. But this is really a moment where that experience, both with these processes and with our community, I think would really serve the Planning Commission better. So with that, I was very interested in seeing Molly Sade move forward to final consideration for the Planning Commission. But I would say I would also be open to I would be very much open to considering Nathan Hofkamp for the Planning Commission as well.
Mr. DeBonne, did you want to say anything?
I just get back to the concept that, this is the Planning Commission, and I really like the idea of people with different opinions, different experiences, different points of view, and I'm referring to, full-on, saving nature opposed to develop and sell, so I mean, just the whole spectrum of opinions. This is the Planning Commission. We are a growing area. When we were doing the interviews, I started to come up with the concept of, we're about 200,000. We're talking about a horizon, 235,000 is some date out there. I forget the dates, but 250 is kind of like the next big step you think of, that I think of. 250,000 people is a 250,000, so you just got to start to think like that. How, where are we going to put everybody? So yeah, just back to the beginning here. I mean, I definitely don't mind, that diversity of opinion on the Planning Commission. So, as I say, Nathan and I just kind of, I interviewed the three that we're all talking about here, and Nathan seemed to have a good round view of everything.
I know it's interesting, was talking with people that actually live in the Tahoe area, and you think of that as a destination also, but their population is much, much, much smaller than Bend, Deschutes County, and yes, definitely we do have a population that's growing here, and it's it's wise really to get someone with a lot of depth on the commission. So it seems like I was happy to see that Nathan didn't work for, I think weren't we threatened by 1,000 Friends a couple of years ago? He doesn't work for them, so that was good to see.
Yes, we were, yeah.
Yes, they said they were,
Yes.
yeah, we were going to go to prison. So anyway, I was glad, I said, well, when I talked with him, I said, I'm really glad to know that you aren't part of that, you were not part of that team. So, the numbers are what they may.
Well, and with the other interviews, I mean, Molly Sade, very exciting, great experience, long-term history, and Eric Berlin, that's exciting. I mean, just talking to him is just get a little bit of excitement going. So all three were just wonderful folks to talk to that were, as I say, offering to spend time on our Planning Commission to serve the people of Deschutes County.
And the good news is what, we'll have 2 people to replace shortly. So perhaps the 2 that we don't select today will be up for shortly when Dale Crawford and Steve Swisher retire. I believe they're being termed out. Is it not true?
And Maggie Kirby,
Oh, Maggie, excuse me.
her term will
Maggie
come up pretty
and-
soon as well.
Maggie and Dale?
There's, yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Steve Swisher terms out this June, so we're actually actively, thanks to the help of personnel and with a press release, we are actively recruiting for a Sisters area replacement for Commissioner Swisher. So Morgan helped with that press release, which went out just a few days ago. And then you are right, Chair Adair, that next year in June, we will lose 2 commissioners who will term out, Commissioner Crawford and Commissioner Kirby. So
June 2023.
a year from this
A
June.
year from now?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we do have opportunities to add people then.
Well,
And none of the 3 fit the sisters, though. So that truly is, okay, good. I'm glad to know that press release is out there.
Yeah, the recruitment is for just about a little over 4 weeks. So next month, I'll come back, let go through the same process, same conversation. I'll let you know how many applicants we have and what your thoughts are for how to interview that vacancy. But we can revisit that in a month's time.
And I do want to thank them for their service. It's a serious commitment. It's 2 Thursdays a month. It's critical, and we appreciate their feedback. And I do believe we'll be having probably a combined meeting with them in June. So
Correct. Duly noted by staff.
thank you very much, Peter.
in person probably, too.
That's the good news. So Commissioner DeBonne, you want to stay with Nathan then?
Yeah, I'd support Nathan, so at this point, I'll move Nathan Hofkamp to join us on the Deschutes County Planning Commission for a 4-year term, I think, if we want to.
Is it 4, or I thought it was 2?
I was
It's
just
a
finishing a
2-year
term. Yep, 2-year term, let's
term.
get clear,
It's
yeah.
till June
Yep.
30th of 2024. Commissioner Chang, did you want to second it?
I mean, I would support Nathan. I mean, I would also put forward that I would also be happy to make a motion to appoint Molly Chaudet to this position. So, we have to finish one motion first before we can consider another. Is that right?
Right. So,
So with that interest in, potentially offering that up as a motion, I'll abstain from seconding it, for the moment.
okay. All right, then I'll second the motion for Nathan. Is there any other discussion? Could you remind the community who is on the board, on the Planning Commission at this time?
I'd be
Just so
happy
we
to.
can refresh our minds
Sure.
besides.
And just for clarity, the Dale Crawford and Maggie Kirby, whose terms expire on June 30th of 2023, Mr. Dale Crawford is an at-large member, and Maggie Kirby represents the Bend area.
Okay.
So I believe several of the candidates that you interviewed last week I believe, come from the Bend region.
Okay.
So currently, our composition of the Planning Commission is Steve Swisher, who's in Sisters, Tony Williams, who represents Southern Deschutes County. I just mentioned Dale Crawford. He's an at-large member. Susan Altman, who's our vice chair, represents the Bend area. Maggie Kirby also represents the Bend area. We have an at-large open position, which you're currently discussing. And then Jessica Kiris, who's our chairperson, who was just recently reappointed, represents the Redmond area.
Okay, all right. So I did second your motion. Any other discussion? Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Okay, and the chair votes yes.
Here we go.
So congratulations to Nathan.
Thank you for your time, especially last week. I thought it was very valuable.
Thank you, Peter.
Nathan.
Thank you for all you do. And I know it's, hopefully we'll get down from the, what, 13 FTEs in Search Hub?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would just say that Nathan, having served for so long on the City of Bend's Planning Commission, is very much ready to hit the ground running, and has will bring great experience to the comp plan process from day one. So that's again, someone I'm very happy to vote for, but just didn't want to make sure that all the very experienced candidates that we had to consider all got a fair shot.
And Commissioners, it's very timely that we know about Sisters, given that we have the joint meeting in a couple of days, so we can make sure we
Right.
make the announcement at the joint meeting with the City of Sisters City Council on Wednesday evening about that opening for a full 4-year term, which is great.
That'll be great.
How timely.
So I'm going to be at a different event that night. This is my priority is to be a county commissioner and get to the meetings, but I just happen to be taking a different priority this one night, so I won't be in Sisters with the rest of the commission that night.
Okay.
Okay.
One other item, just
Okay, yes.
I was able to attend the Shepherd's House Ministries open house at the Redmond campus last Friday, I think midday, and it's just good. There was a small group of folks there talking about their, future development plans for that facility. And Saving Grace is very special because, I'm sorry, Shepherd's House, switching gears here. So Shepherd's House is very special. Just offering that low barrier outreach, grace opportunity to get somebody, stabilized and moving forward long-term. It's a long-term commitment, the services they provide. So this will be a new facility in Redmond. We did help fund their kitchen, so they're working on that development and architectural work. And they're looking to, maybe open full services by the end of the year, so right as next winter comes on.
And I was telling him because of their location, it's right on 97, and the bus stop is across the highway, that perhaps they might even want to get a bus that comes in and actually picks them up there, just because. I just don't want people crossing 97. I just don't think it's.
pretty close, so that's a good point, yeah.
I know. I mean, it just could be a loop around or something, and there's plenty of turnaround parking and everything. So I had, yes, I'd suggested that. So hopefully they can utilize that, and hopefully we'll have some bus drivers by then, right?
Very, very exciting project. I got to take a tour a few weeks back as well.
And I was on the Eastern Oregon call this morning at 9 a.m., and there is something coming up with sage grouse, which we'll be looking at, and they were talking about some of the different issues that went through the state legislature. So it was a good conversation for an hour.
The effort, it seems like the big effort on sage grouse is going to be doing enough in terms of habitat conservation that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service doesn't have to go back and revisit their decision not to list sage grouse, and make a different decision at this point, because basically they review that status every 5 years. So we're coming up on that 5-year mark. So if we're thinking about how we're going to engage on sage grouse issues, that should be, Tim DeBoot from Crook County mentioned this at the COIC board meeting the other day, that the goal will be to do good things in terms of habitat conservation, so that the Fish and Wildlife Service doesn't have to consider listing sage grouse again.
Okay.
I have one other item. You all may have read in the newspaper on Saturday about Stan Thomas, whose wife was unfortunately one of the 1 in a million people who passed away from receiving the Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine. And one of the things that I read in the article was that they had asked the federal government for assistance with, funeral burial costs. And there actually was assistance available for people who were victims of COVID, who had, had passed away because of a COVID infection. And they were told that since Mr. Thomas's wife did not actually have COVID, but died because of very, very rare, infrequent side effects of vaccination, that they were not eligible for that federal aid, which I thought was kind of absurd. But it made me want to come and ask for the board's consideration of trying to fill that, trying to fill that role from our end, either out of American Rescue Plan funds or from some other fund source to, help this family who, were really on the, in many, many ways on the front line of the vaccination effort, to, address, just the, some, the least important and least significant costs, but still meaningful costs of stepping up to become vaccinated. So, that's my proposal, is that we explore, a small amount of American Rescue Plan funding or other funding to help offset, for funeral or other related costs for this family.
So what does FEMA give? Does anyone know what they give for a burial cost? I know a friend of mine, his mother died, and he was told by the doctor that FEMA would pay. And he wasn't particularly enamored with that idea, but I don't know what the amount is that FEMA's offering. Do you have an?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't. And just because FEMA gives a certain amount, we wouldn't have to do the exact same thing.
Well, we wouldn't want to do less.
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do less.
But if what FEMA is offering isn't really significant, then we could also consider doing more.
Right. I would just like to know what they do. No, I got the shot, I think, about a week before she did.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of interesting. I know they said, 1 in 9 million, or there were 9 other people that had the same problem.
The odds were basically 1 in a million.
Yes.
Yeah, and
but, they still had the shot on the list. Yes. So and then you actually qualified to get a booster in 2 months. That's what the CDC finally came out with, even though initially they said and the governor got it too, you only had to have 1 shot and it was 85% effective. So, I went back and reviewed what they originally had said about that. And I know our health department says they try and talk people out of getting that vaccination.
Well, they try to talk women, in a certain age range, are the ones that really have, to the extent that there is a small risk, it is very localized to a certain demographic, and that's the demographic they've been discouraging from getting the J&J.
Okay, well, can someone find out then what FEMA pays so we can know, just a point in time so we can do something? I know my husband read this story, and he was very, he felt really sad for the family.
Yeah. And I'd also just say that, the rest of the story that Mr. Thomas, even after that experience, he felt that getting the vaccination was important and that it helped, that the risks of being vaccinated were lower than the risks of getting infected with COVID unvaccinated, and proceeded to do that. It's quite a, it's a tremendous story in support of the vaccination efforts in our community and efforts to contain COVID and to protect our loved ones and friends and family from the disease. So I would very much like to figure out whether we can offset one of the lesser costs and impacts of this vaccination, but still probably a significant dollar cost for this family.
Okay, I'm sure we'll find out shortly then.
It's pretty easy to find online. I just
Did you pull it up
I just
already?
Googled it.
Oh, thank you, Nick.
on the FEMA.gov, under their FAQ page, their frequently asked questions page. I was responsible for funeral expenses for more than one person whose death was attributed to COVID-19. Can I apply for COVID-19 funeral assistance for more than one death? Well, is there a limit? So for an individual, you may receive at a maximum of $9,000 per deceased individual, and then it's up to $35,000 if there's more than one person. But so if this is accurate, this is just a quick on the fly, just to give the board a sense of what it may be. And I don't know if anybody else has any other information, but that's a quick glance. But we can certainly bring it back for further discussion and evaluation if the board prefers.
Great.
And then could we ask staff to contact Mr. Thomas and kind of find out what they
Yes.
what their arrangements that they made cost them and what would be helpful.
I can do, yes, we can do that. And I do see that, for example, individuals may apply for the assistance, but it very specifically precludes governments, businesses, organizations, et cetera, from completing the applications.
Yeah.
So it would be something that
And
individually they need.
And in this case, I guess it sounds like FEMA told him, because your wife did not die from COVID, she died from vaccination side effects, they were not eligible. So, I'd like us to try and fill that gap.
And that very well could be the case, in which case, yes, this doesn't apply, so.
Yeah, they're not eligible under the formal guidelines for
Okay.
FEMA. It has to, the death has to have been, you have to have a medical examiner or death certificate that says that the death may have been caused by or was likely a result of or was due to COVID or COVID-like symptoms. And so the vaccination wouldn't be that. And the manufacturer's exempt from any liability under that from the PrEP Act, as is the county. So it would just be something you'd be doing out of the largesse of your wanting to do it. It's not in any way a legal mandate or obligation. I'll check with Dan Emerson, but I can't believe ARPA funding would qualify for that. I'd be very surprised.
Would or wouldn't?
Would not.
Would not. I would not expect that it would, but I'll check. Dan's our
Yes.
expert on all things
ARPA
ARPA funding eligible. And
Yeah.
so I'd like to run that by him, but I tend to think it wouldn't be. But he's pretty sharp. He may find a way around it.
And Nick, thank you for looking up the FEMA number so we have some kind of basis for comparison, or starting point for discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Did you have any other?
No, that was it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nick, did you have something you wanted to bring up?
Thank you, Chair Adair. I have a couple of items. One item is a potential letter, and we do have Nathan Garibay online, a potential letter of support for the Lower Bridge Rangeland Fire Protection Association. I'll pass this letter out. This is a letter that Jefferson County Board of Commissioners sent to the Oregon Department of Forestry for the board's consideration, and Nathan may have a perspective to share as well. We haven't coordinated yet, but I appreciate him joining us.
Hello, Nathan. So nice to see you.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I hope you're doing well this beautiful day.
Always. Oh, yes, I haven't gotten my 30 minutes of exercise yet, though, Nathan.
But there's still time.
I know. I'm sure there is somewhere.
I just was asked to step on in case you had any questions. So as many of you know, and I know Commissioner Adair, you've had some interactions with some of the neighbors out there in the Lower Bridge area. Lower Bridge, for a number of years, has engaged in fire suppression on their own property, a number of Lower Bridge landowners. A few years ago, they had approached Oregon Department of Forestry and the county and seeking designation as a Rangeland Fire Protection Association, which at the time was not allowed because prior to I think it was last year or the year before, I apologize, the statute that provided for Rangeland Fire Protection Associations did not include areas with a certain percentage of agricultural land or cropland, and so that has now been changed, which opens the door for places like the Lower Bridge area, also kind of northern central Oregon, like Wasco and Sherman-Gillum counties that too are engaging in some of these activities. So with that change, Lower Bridge, a number of us, including the county forester and myself, as well as representatives from local fire districts, surrounding fire districts, Forest Service, BLM, and Oregon Department of Forestry, met with a number of property owners and residents of the Lower Bridge area in mid-January. There seemed to be pretty overwhelming support from the community members, at least present at the meeting, to form a Rangeland Fire Protection Association, and I believe that there seemed to be fairly universal, if not universal, support from the public agencies present at that meeting. So in order for them to form, they have to submit a request to the State Board of Forestry, and then the State Board of Forestry then approves that. And then that opens up, they have a process they need to go in developing a 501c3 and a lot of administrative things. But then that opens the door for them to receive assistance from Oregon Department of Forestry in the form of technical assistance, equipment, training, to be able to safely engage wildland fires within the boundaries of the RFPA.
Yes, don't forget the Grandview Fire, which, of course, I worry about Mackenzie Canyon because it's a dirt road and it's like one way in and one way out, and I tried to get another way out, and oh my gosh, we just kept running into roadblocks or boulders, I guess you could say. So, you know, I am so glad that this opportunity came up.
Nathan, you mentioned Ed Keith, our county forester, and I know that Ed has spoken to us about this particular area a number of times as sort of a gap in terms of, institutional coverage for fire protection. So I think this is a really exciting proposal from that perspective. One other thing I wanted to ask about was I'm actually under the impression that SB 762 is going to not compel this, but basically require counties to make sure that, that they have wall-to-wall coverage by fire districts or, fire protection organizations at some point in the near future. So does the formation of this RFPA, is this something that we were going to have to do anyway, support the development of this RFPA, in which case this is, it's great that they are, they're self-starters and they're ahead of us.
Yeah, I don't think, or at least I haven't seen what the definition of fire protection as legislated in Senate Bill 762, what that definition is actually going to look like. I think that's still in formation, but I would say that it's going to be something similar to at least, this is complete speculation that an RFPA is going to be the minimum standard. So I think that this helps the county potentially meet that burden, although I don't think we've been told, and Ed probably would be the latest on it, but I don't think we've been told exactly what that requirement's going to look like. But I do think that the RFPA helps us meet that standard for sure. It also is a relatively cost-effective way to provide a baseline level of fire protection, at least to these communities. And then, if the requirement's higher, then, we can evaluate that and see how we need to support that. But I think that this is good timing in helping us not only mitigate a gap in fire protection, but also start to meet those future requirements.
Great, thank you.
So who is a Rangeland Fire Protection Association? Is there a board? Is there a group? Is it the property owners?
Yes, so they form a board of directors, and if you remember, we signed an agreement, an updated agreement with Brothers Hampton Rangeland Fire Protection Association to help support them with a little bit of funds annually. That's basically the exact same model as what the Brothers Hampton is, or I should say a similar model in that they need a board of directors, and then they manage their finances, and they have to file with the Secretary of State's office and do all the things to develop a nonprofit organization. And then once they get that done, they can work with Oregon Department of Forestry and sign a mutual aid agreement with the Oregon Department of Forestry and potentially BLM. And so that helps them then interact and engage on a good footing with the public land management agencies that have kind of intermixed areas of responsibility.
But there's nobody here today from those properties, I guess is my observation.
No one here to ask for our support on this?
Yeah.
Oh, I actually got an email on it and shared it with Nick.
Yeah, I'm just, I usually know the board we're working with, so, we're the Board of Commissioners, we're seeing what Jefferson County's doing, and Nathan Garaby's here, but I'm just wondering who are we doing this for?
John Shepard asked, I know one of my other neighbors is Troy Bliss, who was a Navy Ranger who lives on Mackenzie Canyon. John
Okay, well, no, that helps, so you're kind of connected.
Yeah.
'Cause I just didn't have the people, I didn't know who was behind it.
No, there's a whole group of them, and then I was trying to help someone else who was up from Mackenzie Canyon, and truly, he was only like 2 miles to get out from another exit, and there were too many boulders. I couldn't get that pulled off, so truly, this community needs more help.
Yeah, no, that's great, so you're the connection to this, now I
Yes.
understand a little more about
They're
who's
my
doing
neighbors,
what.
and I drove Bob's white car one time, the whole Mackenzie Canyon, and it never looked the same when I got through, because it's a
And
dirt
then,
road.
Is this fire protection, the footprint in both counties?
Lower Bridge, I guess you'd
Yes.
say.
Yeah, generally speaking, the boundaries they were looking at went from Highway 126 on the north, bound kind of on the west side by the Cloverdale Fire District and Oregon Department of Forestry protection boundary. So that would be kind of that along Holmes Road area would be the west boundary. The south boundary was Highway 126. And then the east boundary would be generally the Redmond Fire District protection boundary. And then it went kind of on the north, it would bump up against the Crooked River Ranch Fire Protection District Fire Protection District boundary. And then kind of that peninsula that goes out, if you're familiar with the Lower Bridge Road, where it goes out into Jefferson County to the north, kind of that boundary up where it meets the Crooked River National Grassland. So that's the general boundary that they were working on, and that covers both Jefferson and Deschutes counties. And I can get in touch with the board. I can get you that contact information if you want a formal name on it. Is fine. I'm sure I can get that information.
And I'm supportive, I'm just trying to figure out who we're supporting. Is, for a Rangeland Fire Protection Association, is that to respond to structure fires or any fires or wildland fire?
Only wildland fire. So they'll be trained and equipped to respond to wildland fires. And this would not take the place of a rural fire protection district that provided structural fire protection.
Well, so I think that same area, some of it does not have structural fire protection. So I wonder if can they take this on? Can they take on structures?
They could. They would have to meet a much higher standard as administered by Department of Public Safety standards in the State Fire Marshal's office in equipment and training and all that. But I mean, they could potentially in the future explore expanding to but then I think that would also require a taxing district and all that, which I don't know where, that's up for the community to explore, yeah.
That's fine.
These rangeland fire protection associations, they tend to cover areas with very low population densities. So
And
it's-
not respond to a structure fire, though, specifically either.
Yeah, I mean, it's a, you choose you choose to live out in the remote rural. There's some real advantages to that, and there's some real disadvantages as well.
I've had people tell me, I didn't choose to be in a fire district. I mean, some people don't. They don't want to pay those taxes. They're like, I'll take care of myself. So no, I know, there's people like that.
Oh, the other gentleman I worked with was Robert Duckworth, who is building a new house in that community, so.
Well, so that's kind of makes sense, though. I mean, is it for rangeland wildfire only, or is there any insurance benefits for property owners, homeowners? So, just questions. I'm supportive. There's no downside into going create a district
Okay.
if they want
Do we need a
to.
motion or anything? Do we need a letter?
Well,
comparable to
this letter doesn't. This isn't our letter. Yeah.
No, I know.
But somebody can just sign as the chair and the vice chair, scratch it out,
Okay.
change the logo.
Change the logo,
Mhm.
say the Deschutes County Board of Commissioners supports.
Right,
It
so
looks
you'd be moving to authorize a letter of support along the lines of the Jefferson County one for either all of you to sign or board chair.
Okay.
I move to authorize a letter of support in support of formation of a rangeland fire protection association for the Lower Bridge community.
And I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. I see that Nathan was just about to say something else. I just wanted to make sure that,
Oh, Nathan, what
and
is
I'm so glad he's here because I couldn't have answered these questions without him. So thanks to Whitney for coordinating and Nathan for being available.
Happy to jump in wherever I can help. Nick, I'll just forward you an email that has the relevant players on the RFPA and the map, and then you can, if that helps.
That will help, and I just see the email that Chair Adair received. This is all lining up for a meeting with ODF, not W, just ODF, on June 9th. So they're trying to get the pieces put together in preparation for that important meeting, so thank you.
Oh, it's June 9th. I kept thinking it was March 9th. I was worrying.
Oh,
It seems like everything is happening in March. So, okay, great. June 9th.
So Commissioners, that's one other item. Another item I have, we can either talk about it now or we can talk about it at a subsequent meeting, and this is a draft response to the Lapine Rural Fire Protection District. They are asking the county to impose a permanent ban on the personal use and sale of fireworks. And I have a draft letter. We can either talk about it now or we can talk about it at a future meeting, your choice. I'll pass this out as you decide how you'd like to proceed.
so I think we kind of made our choice on that. We haven't sent a letter yet.
So, yeah, that was my question. So, in response to the request that they made, if we have not issued a formal written response yet at this point.
This
Yeah,
is
so we just
it.
saw that. I did see this,
This
but I
would be-
guess yes. Must have just slept a few weeks since we.
We have not provided a response. They sent a letter on December 9th, and then they had a follow-up letter or email on or in February.
Yep.
Initially, I had a draft response to February 23rd, but if the board would like more time to consider it, there's not a rush to do this.
Well, this kind of, this states.
We've
what-
already signaled to them,
Yeah.
our intent.
And I called the
think-
chief after we made that decision too, to get him clarity.
Yeah, so I think it's good to send them a formal written response as promptly as we can. And I like the language in this letter. I would be ready to support this letter right now.
And I'll second it.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Chang?
Yes?
Commissioner DeBonne?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
So as I say, yeah, about a month, I called and left him a message that this was our choice afterwards. So this is just a follow-up in paper.
Okay, good.
So thank you, Commissioner. So with that information, we'll schedule this for a meeting, because this doesn't say we will do it, it says we will commit to doing it, to considering it. Since the district did not enact a ban, the board will consider imposing a seasonal ban in unincorporated
Well, if
areas
it's
for
super dry and, yeah.
summer 2022. So, okay.
Looking that way right now. Sorry, are you passing this to me?
Yes, we need your signatures on that one. Carol Wood's going to come down and pick it up. That's what she told me.
So another item, we had the Core 3 quarterly meeting today. So obviously, it's a new day, knowing that the state legislature funded it in the amount of $9.5 million. But it was really just organization and, who's leading, who's following, and what's the value to the, the small agencies, police and fire. So it was really just kind of a scope of everything today meeting. And it's just quarterly. But as I say, with some of that funding and COIC in place, we'll proceed with land use. Last week we decided to support that MOU IGA document saying the land is available. So now it'll be a little bit more formal proceeding with that land. Rezone back to, or UGB, and then the zoning. And it'll be a year before that ever comes around, gets
A year?
landed if it does, yeah. But it's getting more serious.
Okay.
I'm really glad that the state is investing in that facility, because it seems like from the emergency response perspective, the majority of the value is to people who are not from Deschutes County. So appropriate for the state to step up and support the development of a facility that will be able to provide refuge for people who are affected by a Cascadia earthquake event, or massive wildfires in Western Oregon or things like that.
And then, there's going to be avenues of asks now that the state supported it, go back to the feds again. And I know there's, discussions at the senator's office and, see what the federal government might want to be able to partner with us on too.
Great.
Okay, all right. Is that all of our other items? I think we need to go into executive session now, please.